Afternoon, everybody. We can stay seated. As we begin the council, no, stay seated. You're right. Yeah. This council meeting, as we begin the hearing and submissions of the 19th of May, which will be today and then into tomorrow morning. We just, before we begin, welcome everybody. Thank you to the submitters that are here. Just make sure everyone turns off their mobile devices. If we need to get outside, the emergency exit is here on the right, down the stairs, and we assembled outside the council chambers down on the front here. There's a fire, follow the instructions of the CE, and obviously if there's an earthquake, drop, cover, hold. And if anyone needs any assistance to leave the building, let us know and we can register that with governance. Apologies, we're all present. And item 2 is the declaration of interest. So if any members are reminded to declare any interest that may arise between their roles as a member and any private or other external interest, please let us know or governance. Item 3 is public forum. There is no public forum as such. The purpose of this meeting and tomorrow is to hear submissions for the annual plan. And the timetable today, we will go over 2 hours. So what I'll do is to avoid disrupting, we'll suggest that we resolve that the meeting will sit for more than 2 hours without a break. Happy to move. Councillor Holden, seconded by Councillor Carey. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, no, that's been carried. And then we go to item 4, which is the hearing report, annual plan 2025-26. And the report, we have a report from the group manager. I also want to make note that we receive the notes and update the report and the 2 additional submissions to accept that. So we accept A through D. Happy to move. Do we have a seconder? Emir Swales. All those in favour say aye. Aye. The contrary, no. Been carried. So we'll now begin to hear the respondents' verbal submissions. Just to remind submitters that councillors have read all the submissions. So it's a matter of highlighting what you want to highlight. Everyone has a bell will ring. You have 5 minutes. A bell will ring at 4, and you'll get 2 or 3 bills at 5. Okay. So welcome, and we will begin that process. And the first speaker is submission 282, which is Lisa Cameron. Lisa here? No. So we'll move to submission 173, which is John O'Malley. Welcome, John.
I have here, Mayor. I don't have a written submission on the annual plan per se, but I do have here. I don't really like to see it. It's a written submission and sorts on the water issue. Should councillors wish to have a copy? I know Councillor Carson likes to read it. I don't know if I've got enough copies of the reading of this.
We can get some done.
Be here, but change the diocese, and we start with the annual plan, right?
Yes.
Okay, let's go. Well, first about the issue about curbside recycling. Honestly, to avoid congestion, the present collection bins and bulk treatment, I think will help. Every time I go down, they are rather full. I do wonder what helps you do about the frequency of it, but it seems to be working rather well. I hear our friends down the road in Hutt City, some of the recycling there of their method doesn't work well, and some loads are condemned, which means the locals take a lot of training. And I would make it to you my experience of being in Tokyo, Japan, where you sort of 4 or 5 rubbish bins at a time. But the problem is enforced. If you mess it up, then you'll be visited by a little man with a peaked cap and a fine. I don't see that kind of process working here in Upper Hutt. So you've got a massive education job, and I don't see that happening in 5 minutes. So that's why I've voted the way I have. Next, revenue and financing policy. One of the things here was, did you reference other councils about the 75% reduction for forestry? Yes, I support it, but I would have thought you would look at some standards of Hawke's Bay and Taupo showing you were in line with everybody else. they get plenty of roads smashed up by logging trucks and everything else that goes on to it. So I couldn't see any logic why, but I'm not opposing it. I'm just saying I would appreciate it had it been there. And also I support the intended recovery increase of alcohol costs from 60 to 70 to 60 to 90. And I would have preferred it gone to 100% because the abuse of alcohol in our community is a curse. All right, so the next thing was the schedule of fees and charges. As I put down here, I would like to see in some computational basis. And hey, I went right through that book, the law, and honestly, it seems to be a gut feel reaction. Is there not some other basis we can have? How do we compare with other councils like Hut or other councils of our size? They all must have the same sort of issues. And if you only, it don't really give me a better feeling of a feeling not having any community, but there are other people in the nation see such things. You wouldn't want to be your person out, would you? Okay, next 4, gambling venue policy revenue here. Now I went for sinking lid for and no new machines or venues. Here's the reason why. And I don't want to name any organisations. I don't think it's appropriate. I don't want to threaten their licensing law. But I have seen men having had too much alcohol through caution of the road and substantial sums of money disappear down the throat. Oh, what they used to be called when I was younger, one-armed bandits. Today they're mechanical, computerised. Such behaviour needs to be curtailed. Okay, simple as that. I have also seen the other thing very similar, but also the scratchies. And I've seen people pushing that to the point of let's take a gamble, hope I can get a big cash, and they can see the expression on their face and their disappointment. The catch you've got is they're funding community bodies. And I do know that the Cosy Club pays out substantial sums of money in that from its profits, mainly which comes from such. Well, we fought there, but I think we need to start looking at a lot of maybe if it's such a big council system with some fundraising, okay. The alcohol fees bylaw. I fully concur the recommendation of the bylaw and the outcomes it produces, but I can't yet see why if everyone else is doing 90%, why are we just doing 80%? How about we just turn in line with everybody else on the issue and toughen up on the alcohol in the country as a means of abuse and further prevention? As regards change to average rate increases here, one thing I noticed in the 4.16% reduction, it's chopping out libraries, economic development and land transport. Well, I don't see that having the libraries, economic development, fine, I would have cut the lot extra in the current environment. But land transport, we've had, I don't quite know how you prioritise things on that, but we had the misfortune of a woman killed on a pedestrian crossing inside the Saul Street Farms. Okay? And I certainly hope that gets a high priority. And I'll leave it there for you to think about, okay? And as regards the future consequences of these on future years, well, in business, if you get a change of substantial nature in 1 year to a plan, you look at the flow-on consequences of it. I understand it's not practice here until such time as you finish this year's rhythm, then you look at the consequences on the next. I think that's short-sighted. I invite you to stretch your vision a bit better on the issue. All right, okay, what have we got there? There's also the issue, which I understand is sub judice, that's about the Gensen group. I'm most disappointed to read in the newspaper what has happened. I appear I can say a little more than that, but I shall certainly not be letting the matter lie or rest. In future time, I'll be asking more questions. Just thought I'd highlight to and put all you on that. Finally, you've got $26 million cash on the balance sheet. Money was drawn down from the local government funding agency. Really, Mayor, is it good politics to run around complaining we've got no money when we've got 26 million sitting on the balance sheet? I'll let you work out the political wisdom of that, but it's something I wouldn't be exposing myself to. Thank you. Finish.
Right, so we'll take some questions on that and then you'll go on to the water. Is that okay? You happy to do that?
Yeah, fine.
Any questions for John? Councillor Carson.
Hi, John. Are you not aware of the new requirements for responsible host for venues that have gaming machines, and that they are required to do a minimum of 3 sweeps of the gaming room, document who they spoke to, and then that's reviewed and audited? Are you not aware of
I haven't seen that come in or being applied as yet, so I don't quite know where it's at. Is it law?
Last year, And in fact, the Quasi Club does do 4 sweeps of the gaming room. That is 1.25 hours.
Well, even then, I don't believe it. It's not a particular device I find good for the community. Finish, doesn't matter how many sweeps you do.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, John, now, local water done well.
Or should it be called local water, not done well? You're right, okay. I've done my best to contain the time. I might need a couple of minutes for a couple of other paragraphs. Great, see what I'm doing here. Mayor and councillors, thanks for the opportunity once again to do this, despite I've got a problem with reading because I'm only got one eye that works. Nothing is set in concrete. And via good political strategy, other options can be aired, debated and considered. However, I find it contradictory in seeing community consultation process, mainly on Facebook, being told that if we don't follow the dictates of the government via the DIO, you councillors are going to be replaced by a commissioner. So what's the intended value of engaging in community consultation? Are we engaging in a farce here? Who's going to read it? Who's going to take notice of it? Who's going to come back with sensible thoughts about it? I find that most disappointing. Given we're dealing with legislation yet to be formed, I put it to you guys as a golden opportunity to state our case by way of a conditional acceptance of one or two options we have before us. There is nothing in the legislation preventing us from doing so. In doing so, we're presenting ourselves in the spirit of working with government and others, ensuring workability and political acceptance in delivery of water services. Yes, it involves the courage to push back on some government proposals that are not interested in the community you are called to serve. Some of the conditions and matters for resolution must be resolved. I've got here that I invite you to engage in. Well, we all know about Wellington Water. If they're not on board totally with this, then it's right back to square one. No ifs or buts. Councils that are not just to be asset minders. All councils agree to pull their assets under a common organisation. It's by way of their active shareholding. It should be under their fully directed control. Public transparency and accountability by councils must be preserved. I suggest a public company structure under Section 137 of the Local Authorities Act 2022 be considered. In short, delivery of water services should follow the operation disciplines the way we operate a public company. In New Zealand, look at here, New Zealand. CCOs are unnecessary. I know Mayor Brown's not a favour of them either. He believes in the separate funding structure right here. I expect council to seek the restoration of my democracy rights and the rest of the citizens of this town. That are detailed in my earlier written submission. Push back against it, against the present move to totalitarianism. In any joint company organisation so formed, the ownership must be a mix of local government authorities with no private sector ownership involved. And this will need to ring fence the subsequent reporting requirements being sought in the present proposal. Setting up a common delivery structure requires a cohesive legal process. How's it going to be achieved and who's funding it? Also, before a plan begins to develop, directors with the appropriate engineering, commercial experience, contracting and the contemporary environment must be appointed. Who's to lead this issue and who's paying the cost? Clarity among the councils must be sought and agreed before any further progress can be made. I don't know where you're at with it. You seem to be doing a lot of work, but I haven't seen any concrete results yet. Then a management structure and delivery function need to be set up. Clarification must be sought on all the funding of this. I note the council is required to develop a plan what is essentially rebuilding the infrastructure of water service delivery. Both high and low planning processes require competencies in the domain of contestable contract management, mechanical engineering, related disciplines, project management, costing and the like. From that process, if done in detail and substance, provided operational budgeting, capital expenditure, along with identification of sources of funding, both working and long-term capital, can be done. It's not a process to be untaken lightly or done in a mad rush, which is what's happening at the moment. We see that's how you end up with the thing being a mess. It's not a conventional town planning process, rather it's a disciplined engineering one by skilled, competent people. The volume of work is substantial. I doubt the timetable you're working under can allow you to do justice to it, and I feel sorry for you being put in that position. I think it's most wrong and inequitable. These skill sets among senior managers and board members exercising a governance role is imperative. Otherwise, repeat the incompetence of Wellington Water. Councils must be directly active via their shareholding capacity and the appointment process and may need assistance of human resources. The charging for distribution appears to be ring-fenced with its city boundary. Must be ring-fenced with them, so as to prevent cross-subsidisation. There must be accountability for lack of past investment decisions in maintaining the water networks. Community affordability, I addressed earlier in my submission, And I noticed in the Facebook page, I didn't see you lot really addressing that and helping the poorer members of the community. That's shocking. I now draw your attention to the statement of the Guide for Water Service Delivery Plans. The plan states as follows. The plans will support the Commerce Commission to develop the enduring economic regulation regime for water service. You must outright reject this requirement. There is a place for value for money audits and effective for sufficiency auditing, which for years has been conducted successfully by the Auditor General, who has no need for educational support from yourselves. You don't need to look no further than the recent Auditor General report on the child and young persons. I keep getting American stuff. Okay, now here's the issue. Here's your issue. Right in this document here, which was given to you as a guide for doing a plan, this is where the statement came from, it was out of the DIA or somebody, is where you find this statement about councils, that you're to work with other councils to develop a joint plan, and the plans are to support, you're called to support the Commerce Commission. To be effective, it's got to be independent. In other words, when I read this, you have to teach them and train them to do their job. They've been utterly incompetent in everything else they've touched. That's the economic division of it, not the legal side of it. Banks gouges, supermarkets run amok, and the list goes on. They're totally inappropriate. They're an economic theorist outfit. The Auditor General isn't, and he produces concrete calls about organisations that don't do their job properly. And finally, at the last election, the new government agreed to the regionalisation of water services, but it did not receive a mandate to its privatisation. I know there's a clause in there, but quite frankly, that's easy. The structure should make darn sure it can't be privatised, and that's where the thing goes wrong, in my view. Today, governments intend to privatise water services by stealth. Council should publicly challenge the government on this issue. Council needs to be more proactive in informing the public of what's being proposed and the consequences. One, the loss of democracy they presently enjoy. Future ratio, we had to go with that in the Facebook video, I suppose. The loss of influence in determining affordability, the loss of touch with the rest of people as a community, and subservient to an unelected, untalkable, no method of communication board. I rest my case. Thank you for hearing me.
Thanks, John. Thank you. Any questions for John? Councillor Griffiths.
Thank you. Thanks for coming along, John. Paragraph 7. There must be accountability for the lack of past investment decisions and changes.
Yep. Well, I couldn't bring the document in, but you've got a document that gives all the nice pie charts of where all the various councils are at in terms of water. And Wellington, particularly on stormwater, is a basket case, in my view, if that is true. And some others as well. So you can still ring fence, you can ring fence the whole thing, but you can ring fence components of it as well. It's just an accounting exercise. I'm a chartered accountant, spent years out of 50 years now going. That's the point is that people like Porirua can't afford to subsidise Wellington. They shouldn't be asked to. Nor should we. And cross-subsidisation is the thing that the mayor here has raised many times before. He seems to be falling on deaf ears. Nevertheless, one keeps trying. And that's a key point when you look at that report you had showing the various councils. Points blank to me. Well, you messed it up. You take the hit. It's going to get a bit difficult between ourselves and Hutt over stormwater, because they own the current disposal. No, sorry, not stormwater, wastewater, because they own the current disposal mechanism. But that's the art of negotiation, really. You can do it on a household basis or sharing costs, industry basis. There's all kinds of simple cost allocations that are reasonable and factual you can use. It's not impossible. Industry's done it for years in the private sector. Time, public authorities got business-like and disciplined in their processes. Thank you.
Councillor Carson.
John, about the question. Are you not aware that the legislation provides for each council to determine within the CCO their charging rates for the first 5 years in order to stop cross-subsidisation?
Why just the first 5 years?
Because after that, then it's presumed, according to the legislators, that things will start to even out somewhat.
Yeah, well,
So, anyway, there's protection for the first 5 years.
I consider that inadequate. quite frankly. See, this is the problem. Decisions are being made and you've got no plan of work, no plan of what's going to be done, no decisions are made of what the costs are or where they're going to fall. It's going to take a downside more than 5 years to sort this mess out. And particularly when you're into borrowings for new wastewater development in the Hutt City, who knows what it's going to cost for Wellington and where the outfall's going to go. And what I didn't like about the paper is that it's you'd never run a business this way. You'd first find out the work to be done and you would size it, you would prioritise it. You then get competent people who know the disciplines and skills, as I said, in engineering and everything else that follows it. And then you would get an indication of where the costs are going to be incurred and then where they should fall. But what we've got here is an act that's prejudging everything and attempting to be got massive cross-subsidisation, void of fact. I've asked for financial modelling, been shown absolutely nothing. Now, I haven't put a whole lot of OIAs into the DIA. I've never seen anything come out of it as substance. And of course, I was most appalled, as I said to you, your job is to educate the Commerce Commission. Come on, get rid of lots of farce.
Okay, no other questions. Thank you, John. Oh.
Sorry, Your Worship. John, I just want to thank you for your submission. It's really quite comprehensive and you've pulled out a number of things that possibly we need to take under advisement. And look, one of the things that I quite like is the rates rebate scheme, because when you do look at some of the modelling that we have been given the opportunity to look at, it is quite horrific when you think of the impact. But I think as elected members around this table, we know, like you, that we are in the dark when it comes to the pieces of legislation that have yet to be passed. And it's a pity that we're not going to have the opportunity to go back out to the community to consult. So we're going to have to do the best that we can with whatever is dictated to us with that legislation. But we will take on board a number of the things that you've put in here, because I tend to agree with you around the Commerce Commission. It is not their role, and I don't see them as being as independent as probably another entity that looks at the charging model, because it's a different perspective that they're going to be looking at. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
Mayor, you got a minute for 2 minutes for a story about Wanganui? What's happening? Are you up to date?
Lots of things.
Wanganui Council is totally independent. They do not need to do anything for the three waters. They bought a new wastewater thing about 6-7 years ago. Their fresh water they get by bore. It's a bit hard. They clean it out by filter, and stormwater goes into the river. Finished. Got a nice ring around and said, fine, we want none of this. And what's around them? Partia, broke, and a whole pile of little councils. And none of them, I understand from context I've got up there, can afford to do anything of the size and magnitude that's needed. It's right in the heart of the Taranaki National Party voting territory, right? Okay, this thing is fast becoming a national political issue. I don't know how the bill they got now is going to cater to that one. I just give it to you as an information. Thank you for your
Thank you. Thanks, John. Okay, next submitter is submission number 8184. Not here. Tracy Sims. Then we go to submission 24. Not here. Submission 27. Not here.
Hang on.
We have got Louise Rohloff here. What about?
Can you say the names?
No, well, some people did not want to be identified. Yeah. Yeah, we'll bring you forward. Are you happy to do that, Louise? Louise? You happy to come early?
I'm ready.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that's submission 158. Page 59.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Louise Rohloff, and I'm accompanied by Patricia Gilmer, and we are here on behalf of Grey Power Upper Hutt. Your Worship, councillors, Grey Power's main concern is the worsening affordability of local government for the greater proportion of our community. And we are dismayed that central government is doing so little about it. Since the LTP was adopted last year, I think it's fair to say that there's been universal media and even agency recognition of the fact that lower income households are having, well, frankly, unsustainable loads placed upon their budgets by councils who are trying to balance their budgets. And we've got a vicious circle which has somehow got to be interrupted, reconstructed on a basis that we can all thrive in the environment we're in. Since like the main reason that I'm here is unaffordability, but the recent development of the local water done well situation has actually intensified that situation on the one hand, but on the other, Grey Power Upper Hutt sees that it's opened up an opportunity to actually put some more spending power in the hands of low-income households if there was another alternative acceptable to government for you to have a look at. And for that reason, I've spent some time over the last week or so trying to put together a schematic which is circulated to you. And what it amounts to is that I put to you that central government itself has the responsibility of kaitiakitanga for our vital water-based life stream. And therefore, we have tabled for your consideration an outline of what we believe is a better alternative for local water done well. We agree that the operational model that you are looking so closely at, as is the rest of the nation, that probably goes down a track that is entirely consistent with the way we feel the operation should unfold. It is the matter of funding the whole operation, though, and it's a matter of assured prevention of water supply being ever made private. We think it should be sacrosanct and frankly, directly administered by government, probably through the health department vote. For that reason, we, within our own organisation, Upper Hutt Grey Power now has managed to achieve a speaking right at a Lower North Island conference of Grey Power, which, and when it covers the area from New Plymouth across to Wairoa and down to Wellington, at which I, on behalf of Grey Power Upper Hutt, will be endeavouring to bring on board at least that section of other Grey Power areas. And we believe that we have a proposition for them that they might well start to talk to their councils about. I've already exposed that document to the national president of Grey Power, and she has indicated interest. It hasn't gone any further than that, and I hope that between now and all the work that I know you'll be doing over the next few months, we might get an opportunity to talk to you about it. Whatever happens, I believe it's important for the community to have some form of conduit between council and the community as this whole episode unfolds. And I mean, of course, the setting up of local water done well. I appreciate that between now and 2028, each individual council may well be preparing their particular infrastructure and their funding arrangements until we get a more wider umbrella organisation underway. So I think there's time to do this and to come up with a good solution. All I can say is that I am hopeful that Grey Power will proceed on the basis of trying to find with their local councils a way forward that we can together be proud of. Your Worship, I can't explain the situation any better than that at this point, but I'm happy to try to answer any questions.
Hey, is there any questions for Councillor Carson?
Yeah, thank you very much for your ideas. Don't you think the train has already left the station and is far in the distance?
Pardon?
Don't you think the train has already left the station and is proceeding far into the distance?
Right. Well, you know, I think I've interpreted my hearing, what you're asking, but I think that in the public arena, I will obviously find favour for what I'm asking, and I'm asking about direct government funding of it, and which would result in, aside from a household paying a connection fee or somehow recognising that connection, that up to a standard allowance based on husbanding the resources, that they in fact will pay nothing for access to a God-given commodity. Or it's not a commodity, that's an insult to water. And of course, that money saved will inject a very significant amount of spending power into the economy used by people that actually spend it. Not loan it out to other people and hold them at ransom with interest rates. They spend it and drive the economy. I believe what we're proposing will attract the interest of small businessmen universally.
Okay, any other questions? One more, Councillor Carson.
What's the difference between paying for water through your rates?
Yes.
And paying it paying it to a CCO through as a commodity like electricity and gas for the use of water? I see no difference. You either pay for water through your rates or you pay it to a CCO.
There's a big difference in practice, Councillor, I think, in that. Look at the situation where a household is struggling. They can't pay their rates. You already are probably identifying them. Are you going to require, as is indicated by all that I've read, likely to happen, that they, to get access to water, having endured first, being told that they're being referred to debt collectors and you know who, they will be allocated an opportunity to address a subcommittee formed by councils to actually see if they qualify for help from a charitable organisation. Now, for that to happen, to be imposed on ordinary people simply for access to water, I don't think it's tenable. And I think that's the big difference. On the other hand, if it's paid for by government and there's extra spending power, and believe me, they haven't come up with any other way of injecting spending power into households, that will be beneficial. You know, the turnover as that money circulates in the community, that'll help to bolster the economy.
Okay.
But anyway, we could argue this.
Questions?
Matter of opinion.
Thank you, Lewis. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We now go to submitter number 157, which is Maddie Cullen, and that's via Zoom. It's on page 42. Maddie, hi.
Kia ora. Kia ora.
You can hear you. You can hear us.
Yes.
Yep.
Kia ora.
Thank you. Thank you for submitting. Over to you.
Okay, can you hear us all right?
Perfectly. Thank you. Yep.
Sorry.
Good.
We're looking behind you, Lou.
No, it's on the screen. No on the screen. Just check that and see.
Can you see our screen?
Yes.
I'm thoroughly confused. I'm sorry.
We're looking behind you.
There's another presenter.
We're looking behind you at the screen.
Yeah,
Yep.
No, on the screen.
Away you go, Maddie.
need to move over.
Cara tātou, ko Madelaine Cullen Bylaw.
You just put it on the screen.
Yeah, we can see that. We can see it.
Oh, excellent, thank you.
Yep. Yep.
Cara tātou, ko Madelaine Cullen tōku ingoa. No te arawa kotirana me airana ahau. He kai tātari kaupapa haere ahau ki PGF. Tēnā koutou katoa. Ahi ahi Mārie, my name is Madelaine Cullen. I whakapapa to the Te Arawa Waka and I'm also of Scottish and Irish descent. I am the policy advisor at PGF Services. The gambling industry focus only on the most extreme cases of gambling harm, but harm occurs on a continuum from mild to severe. Those struggling to pay bills or facing tension at home due to gambling are experiencing real harm despite being labelled as mild. Likewise, someone making repeated ATM withdrawals in a pokie venue while visibly anxious is already in the grips of harm. Early intervention is critical, and this is why we advocate for a public health approach focusing on prevention, which is widely recognised as best practice. Today, we're focusing on a very real cause of harm in Aotearoa. Class 4 gambling is high risk and high turnover, and it remains a leading cause of gambling harm and the main reason that people seek help. A small group of regular players generates most of the losses, and research shows that 30% of pokie losses come from people identified as moderate risk or problem gamblers. 1 in 5 pokie players are already experiencing harm, whether low, moderate or severe, and for those who play once a month or more, over 50% are reporting harm. This isn't just a statistic, it's a public health issue that directly affects whānau and communities across the motu, including here in Upper Hutt. While many grants support worthy causes, we must consider where the money is coming from, and over 60% of pokie venues are located in communities with medium-high or high levels of deprivation. This pattern is also evident in Upper Hutt, and broader analysis shows that 1 venue is situated in low deprivation, with 6 venues in medium-low and 2 venues in medium-high deprivation communities. Research from the Department of Internal Affairs revealed a stark imbalance, with well-off communities contributing just 26% of pokie losses, but receiving 88% of the grants, and higher deprivation communities providing 74% of the money, but only receiving 12% in grants. This is a redistributive system of harm, and it's time to change that. You'll often hear the gambling industry claim that reducing pokie numbers will drive people to gamble online. There's no evidence to suggest this, and a new licensing system for online gambling is expected by 2026, but until then it remains a developing space. But right now, dropping online gambling into a policy hearing for pokies is a red herring, and we believe it's an attempt to shift the conversation toward online gambling and an attempt to downplay the damage that pokies are causing in your communities. Around 56% of all councils have already adopted a sinking lid policy, along with all other TLAs in the Wellington region. While effective, sinking lids alone are not fast enough in reducing harm, especially in high deprivation areas where pokies and harm remain concentrated. And we urge councils to go further, to push for greater local control over pokie numbers and to back stronger reforms. It's misleading to say that sinking lid policies impact community funding. Machines are only removed when a venue closes, and this is a slow process. Meanwhile, pokie spending continues to rise nationally. That's why we're calling on Upper Hutt City Council to vote for a sinking lid policy with no relocations or club mergers allowed. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us today, and we hope that you found our presentation informative. Does anybody have any questions for us?
Thanks, Madelaine. Now, any questions? Councillor Bentley?
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Madelaine. Madelaine, you said that 33% of councils have adopted a sinking lid, yet and pokie revenue is still on the rise nationally. Is there any evidence to show that sinking lids reduces pokie revenue in those areas, or does it just mean each machine takes in more revenue?
Sorry, I'm just making sure I heard you correctly. So are you talking about the efficacy of sinking lids?
Yeah, I want to know, does it actually affect the revenue in those areas where they have sinking lids?
The trouble with sinking lids is that they rely on a venue closing, so they don't actually work very quickly or, certainly fast enough. So even though we advocate for a sinking lid, obviously we don't think they go far enough or fast enough in terms of reducing harm. They do have an impact on expenditure. I mean, the big problem with them, I guess, is that the pokie numbers don't come down in the poorer communities or in the areas where we really need them to come down, where they're causing the most harm.
Thank you, Councillor Carson.
Thank you, Madelaine. Why doesn't your paper and submission include any comment about harmonisation requirements of gaming machine venues, in particular the latest amendments last year, which required, for example, a minimum of 3 sweeps per hour of a gaming venue, the results to be recorded and audited. So why doesn't your paper mention that as a means of reducing or minimising harm from gambling on gaming machines?
Well, I think in response to that, if I'm able to answer that one, in response to that, those regulations were particularly, they're aimed at increasing host responsibilities for venues. And yes, it's a really good thing and we fully support them, but that's sort of relying on the venues to do, which they have a legal requirement to do anyway. They've always had a requirement to provide host responsibility. And the reason those regulations were introduced in the first place was because too many people were falling through the gaps. So I guess we don't mention them in our submission because, it is the law already for those venues to provide host responsibility. And we know, because we see people coming through our own doors, that this doesn't always happen. And we know that we hear anecdotally that those measures are working and are having effect. But too often prior to those, and still now, we're seeing people who are being harmed by pokie machines and where there hasn't been an intervention at a venue level.
Thank you. No other questions? Thank you very much. Thank you, Madelaine. Thank you. Thank you. We now move to submitter number 129, Christopher Mills, Cullen Brewery. Not here. So we'll now move, because we've got Bob here. Are you comfortable to come forward, Bob, now? So we have submitter number 182.
There's one person.
Yeah. So welcome, Bob. That's submitter, as I said, number 182 on page 67. Open.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, and Deputy Mayor and councillors. The first thing I would like to talk to is the differential factor that is applied to rural properties in respect of development. Refer you to the briefing papers that you received, headed Draft Revenue Financing Policy 2025. the bottom of page 16 and the first paragraph, page 17. The paragraph is headed Rural Properties and shows a factor of 75. The briefing reads, and I quote verbatim, because of the distance and likely reduced level of service being received by these properties, the general rating differential is appropriate for rural rating units. The activities that are likely to have reduced level of service for at least but not limited animal control, liquor licensing, environmental health, parking enforcement, and parks and reserves, unquote. In addition to those identified, the rural community has to cope with inadequate internet access in most areas, with most areas only serviced by copper, fibre not an option, and residents obliged to take up satellite services such as Starlink. I'm in Catherine Mansfield Drive. The entire development was laid out to copper some 45 years ago. My daughter's built a new home adjacent to me, with copper network running past her section, but Chorus and Spark refused to create a new connection to the network and do not have an alternative fibre network. The rural area also encounters problematic power supply. Power cuts, regular occurrence, with at least 3 outages every year. The most recent for Catherine Mansfield being yesterday at 5:30, with power not restored until after midday. That was a direct result of some kind individual running their vehicle into a power pole at the top of Blue Mountains. Rural properties do not have the option to connect to reticulated water supply or sewage facilities. There are no footpaths, no street lights, and now council is proposing to exclude the rural area from any consideration relating to curbside recycling, whilst contemporaneously removing the existing Park Street facility. Our roading network is for the majority of poor standard of construction, narrow with sharp bends and not adequate to cope with the demand of 50-ton logging trucks and trailer units. Past assessments of upper Hutt roads have identified the rural network as failing to meet adequate standards. For some reason not specified within documentation, council has chosen to differentiate between rural properties on the basis of area. Those properties 30 hectares or more on one hand, and those properties of less than 30 hectares on the other. Why 30 hectares? Do smaller rural properties receive a greater level of service? I don't think so. This ruling creates anomalies with no rationale to support them. In Catherine Mansfield Drive, for instance, we have a situation where one property is classified as attracting a factor of 75, while adjacent properties are factored 100. Do the properties on either side get higher level of service? I think not. The anomaly repeats throughout the rural area. If the rationale for applying a rating differential of 75 is an identified lower level of service, then logically that must apply to all rural properties. The vast majority of the rural community have been under the impression that their rates were factored at 75 and did not understand council had chosen to apply 30 hectare requirement. There's been no effort by council to draw this to the attention of the rural ratepayers, and I can see the information is there, but you need to be skilled at interpreting official documents to put it together. In the briefing papers, draft annual plan 2025-2026, there is on page 5 a table showing differential factors. That table has a line titled rural and showing a factor of 75. It's not until 3 pages later, all those pages full of detailed information, that on page 8, there's a heading, differential definitions, and under a subheading, rural, further subparagraph, which reads as an area of 30 hectares or more.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Any questions for Bob? Deputy Mayor Sparks?
Bob, thanks for coming in and doing your submission. So what would you identify as a description of what is rural? You've kind of alluded, but you've said that your holding is much smaller than 30 hectares. So you're saying any property that's over the hill should be all viewed the same, regardless of size? Is that what you're asking?
I'm saying that the definition of rural is not made by me, it's not made by any other resident, it's made by council. You produce a map and that map shows rural. You produce a map that shows urban drainage area and that relates to urban. So what is rural is defined by council in producing a map that says rural. And I don't believe there is any logic in trying to differentiate between 3 hectares, 5 hectares, 30 hectares, 300 hectares. Why should there be any difference given the level of service remains constant? That's just my point.
It's fair to say, Bob, that's a discussion that council's had here, and there is going to be a comprehensive rate review next year, and that will be some of the questions that have to get asked. Absolutely. Yep. Okay, thank you very much, Bob. Thank you. Now move to submitter number 225, Lisa Williams. No, but we know we have submitter 240, Elizabeth Hutson. Welcome. Now, you can sit down or stand, whatever you like. That's all right.
Run away.
It's too late now.
Yeah.
Okay, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Elizabeth Hutson and I've lived here in all my life. I'm here to represent myself and my family along with other members of our rural community. I've lived in a hut, as I said, and I've resided in the beautiful Mangaroa Valley for 35 years. We bought a part of the Oliver farm, which was subdivided in 1990, and it had been farmed as a dairy farm throughout the latter part of the last century. At that time, our land was designated as rural valley law. And in order to gain a building permit, we had to provide to council a business plan showing that we could sustain a farming activity, i.e. we were rural. 35 years later, we still have the same land, we still live at the same address, we're still there in Collets Road, and we've developed our property as best as we've been able into a profitable small farming business, allowing equine enthusiasts, myself included, to house our horses, and we provide facilities for this. And all that time, our 1.8, maybe 2 kilometre of road still does not have a footpath or street lights. And the surface of the road, whilst it has been maintained haphazardly, has not been resurfaced to my knowledge. Our roads are generally of poor standard and the one-way bridges have poor visibility. In fact, I don't think we have a two-way bridge. The weather event this weekend saw small rivers flowing over the roads in many places, and the roads are now strewn with debris. And this happens through, well, at any significant weather event, and which, as we know, they are becoming more and more regular. We often have weather-related and non-weather-related, as Bob said, power outages, and our internet and cellular phone coverage is at best a total job. Most of us now rely on wireless internet or Starlink, and for power problems, we all have backup generators. We have to provide our own domestic water supply and septic tank systems, and also pay for any curbside recycling along with our rubbish collection, or drive into Upper Hutt to drop it at the recycling centre. Around for me of about 15 kilometres. I do understand that I live out of town and I accept that there is a price to pay for the tyranny of distance. However, I do not see how it is fair and equitable for myself and other owners of properties to subsidise those who live in town and also those that have a larger acreage of land. The number of landowners in the valley that own over the magic 30 hectares are now few and far between, and one of those lives on my road as my neighbour. So I can't see how it's fair that, you know, we as a smaller, we're not getting any better services than him, and he gets reduced rates. That's all right. I refer to the briefing papers titled Draft Revenue and Financing Policy. The section rural properties outlines a rating factor of 75%. I request some relief that I would ask council to act to remove the 30 hectare criterion and rate all rural properties at a differential factor of 75. And I would say based on the area that we live in, not the area that we own. And there are a number of other factors that I would like relief on, but don't have time to fully discuss here, and they include the forestry. I would ask that council look at the impact of the forestry on the Upper Hutson community and the rural community. Sure. And apply a rating factor designed to compensate for the use of council infrastructure and annual pollen pollution. And that's my bit. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Now, any questions? If you miss files.
Elizabeth, thank you for coming in. And so you talked about an application that you put in and that you were designated under rural A, which meant that you had a lifestyle block that generated an income on it. When did that rating change?
I don't know, but it was done without my knowledge. It was done, yeah, I really don't know.
Okay.
And we were not allowed to be called a lifestyle block. A lifestyle block at that time was not considered to be a sustainable farming size of land. You know, you couldn't, it had been decided that you couldn't actually do a farming activity that was profitable on a property that size. Yeah. So when they did the subdivision of the Oliver block, they made sure that the size of the blocks were, you know, and they did an business, as I say, required that we do this business plan and submitted that before we could even get a building permit to residents. And they also had, the council at that stage also had restrictions on the number of dwellings we could have on a property. We weren't allowed any more than one dwelling.
I guess that's a question of that's right. So Elizabeth, with regard to, you know, there are a number of different size properties over in the rural valley.
Yes.
Is there my question to you would be, in the varying sizes that are smaller than 30 hectares, you could still make a living off it. Could you or could you not?
There are many of us doing that now.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Carey?
Yeah, thank you. In terms of the forestry differential, so we had quite a bit of discussion around that, and some of the feedback was a differential throughout would almost impoverish people. What some of the proposed differentials were. Is there any thoughts on that, or how?
I saw that it was something like 250% or something at the moment, something like that, the differential, and that the council wanted to put it down to something like 75. I'm sure that there is a balance in between the same.
Councillor Corbett? Okay.
Hi, thanks for coming along. My question really is, just for clarity, you don't want footpaths, lights, beautiful roads. You want it how you've got it, rural area?
Well, like I said, I do understand that there are prices to pay for where we live. And certainly we don't need footpaths and lighting like we have in the urban areas. We don't have the population. However, when I first moved into Collins Road, there were under 6 residences on the property. It's now over 20. So maybe we do need, you know, but that's something to look at in the future. At the moment, no, nobody walks down the roads, they all drive.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? No. Were you going to do another submission, Liz, on water, or is it just?
No.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thanks very much. Thanks for coming. Now go to submitter number 286, which is Jarrod True via Zoom, the Gaming Machine Association of New Zealand. That's submission number 286 on page 95. Jarrod, welcome.
Thank you very
Welcome.
much.
Thank you. We can see and hear you. Can hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
All
I'll
good.
just share my screen for my presentation.
Yep, thank you.
Right. Thank you. I'm Jarrod True. I represent the Gaming Machine Association of New Zealand. We're supporting option 2, which is the retention of your current policy and the retention of your current cap of 174 gaming machines. We fully support the minor changes that update the zoning wording to align with the district plan. And it also seems to be sensible to remove the quite vague and unclear term other community facility from the relocation restrictions. The social impact report that was done was excellent. It included an independent assessment of Upper Hutt City's risk rating based on the Ministry of Health tool that's been developed. That assessment was done, set out in the social impact assessment, and Upper Hutt scored only 12 out of 24 based on that independent risk profile. So that gave you a low risk rating, and the recommendations from KPMG and the Ministry of Health, if you had a low risk rating, was that there are no restrictions recommended. It would only be if you had a high risk rating that or a very restrictive policy such as a sinking lid and a policy that didn't allow relocations would be considered appropriate. Early on in the social impact assessment report, it correctly records and notes that your current policy strikes a reasonable balance, and I totally agree. The social impact assessment also notes that the district has relatively few machines, and that the few number of machines puts it fairly and squarely within the low risk category. In relation to the spend, the local spend is currently lower than we saw in the period 2010 to 2020. Importantly, the social impact assessment report also notes the major concern with the rise of online gambling. In relation to the proposal to remove other community facility from the relocation restrictions, that's supported because that term is potentially very wide and very clear. And the concern is if that provision was to remain, given the number of facilities that could fall from that definition, that could amount to effectively a total ban. The policy has sensible restrictions. It limits venues to be within the city centre zone, local centre zone, neighbour centre zone, town zone, and it prevents venues from being close to educational facilities. Those restrictions are appropriate and no further restrictions are required. In relation to your current cap, the current cap is very reasonable. Our problem gambling rate in New Zealand is very, very low, approximately 0.5% of the adult population. There isn't any link between gaming machine numbers and problem gambling rates. Over the last 10, 15 years, we've lost 25% of our machines. However, in the same period, the problem gambling rate has remained the same. It's plateaued, it's remained static. There is, however, significant benefits that come in from our machines. The machines generate extremely valuable community funding. In 2023, there's approximately $1.9 million in local grants. In addition to the external grants that are made, there's also support that goes towards the club venues, including the Upper Hutt Cosmopolitan Club. And of course, gambling is a form of entertainment. 69% of us gamble at least once per year as a form of entertainment. Adopting a more restrictive policy is unlikely to reduce problem gambling, but will accelerate the migration to offshore-based online gambling. And New Zealanders very much love their online gambling. 27% of us participate in some form of online gambling at least once a year, and 19% of that group is doing so weekly. The government has confirmed that we will have online gambling licenses granted in as early as April 2026. The new 15 licenses will be up and running. That will enable the licensing providers to advertise more freely, and that will see even more exponential growth with online gambling. And of course, online gambling is undesirable. There's no local grants. The proposal to license the 15 providers will be a pure commercial basis. They will predominantly be large offshore-based providers. There'll be no local employment, large prizes, and frequent inducements to gamble.
Jarrod, thank you.
Welcome the opportunity to take your questions.
Any questions for Jarrod? Deputy Mayor Swales?
Jarrod, thank you for your submission. One of my concerns has always been moving people to an online platform. So with the legislation changing in April 2026, I'm assuming that you will be in opposition of that, or is it past that and it's set in concrete that it's happening?
That's a very good question. Online gambling's already happening and it's already huge.
Yeah.
So moving to a licensed environment will place some restrictions around it, some harm minimization around it, and it will assist players actually getting paid, which is a real problem at the moment. So I think having a licensing system is better than not having a licensing system. So we wouldn't necessarily oppose that. But what we would oppose is anything that accelerates the migration from the physical environment, where you've got staff walking into the room every 20 minutes monitoring your play, where you need actual cash to play, where the prizes are modest, only $1,000 if the jackpot's linked, versus we wouldn't want to see a situation where people move from that environment to the online licensing system, where the profits go offshore, there's no local employment.
Thank you.
Councillor Bentley?
Thank you, Worship. Jarrod, in your presentation, you highlighted there's 1.8 million that have gone in local grants.
Yeah.
But that's from approximately 11.6 million in gaming machine profit for the same year.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a good return to the community out of the profits of gaming machines?
Yeah, so as I've set out in my written submission, I think what you need to do is add the total return from the machines. So yes, 16, the local grants, $1.87 million. You need to add to that the funds that are generated by the Upper Hutt Cosy Club, $2.3 million from their machines. Those funds go to support the very people that are playing the machines. So you need to add those two together. Then you need to look at the regional and national grants that are also made. And when you combine all of that, you then look at the benefit that comes from the machines. I think your situation is slightly different in that 20% of your machines, a fifth of all your machines are in one club venue, and that club venue uses the profits from the machines to support its own facilities. And those figures aren't included in the external grant data. But I think once you include that, the rate of return is reasonable and appropriate.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Carson?
Thank you, Jarrod. Is there any direct correlation between problem gambling and the use of gaming things?
Not that we've seen. As I outlined in my presentation, we've lost 25% of our machines over the last 10 to 15 years, and during that same period, the problem gambling rate has plateaued, remained exactly the same.
And has the proportion of grants made gone down since COVID and post-COVID compared with pre-COVID?
So what we saw with COVID, obviously, when people were physically prevented from going into our venues, is a massive drop in revenue, obviously. And interestingly, when we look at the likes of Sky City that has an online-based casino, we saw their online players and revenue just absolutely leap up during that same period. So we had a clear migration from our physical environments to the online world. But post-COVID, everything slowly returned back to normal and back to pre-COVID levels.
Councillor Kerr?
Yes, thank you. I'm curious, I generally don't know on the national grants. Is that from pokies as well, or is that from lotteries and national sort of bodies? How does that work when you sit around the money coming back in?
So the grant money is just purely from gaming machines. So the figures that I was talking about, the $1.87 million is purely from gaming machines. And the $2.3 million that's generated for the Upper Hutt Cosy Club is purely from their machines as well.
Like Lion Foundation, for example.
Yeah. So not factoring the other money that's coming in out of the profit is what, yeah, okay.
Great.
Okay, no other questions? Okay, thank you, Jarrod. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you. We now move to submitted 243, which is on page 71, which is Mary Beth Taylor.
Okay, got it loaded up. So grab your popcorn. I have a couple of slides, just some general comments, and then I have some things about our rural area and a little bit on the local water done well. I have a couple of things about what I would really like you to do, do's and don'ts, right? Do's and don'ts. So the Gibbon Street realignment, it's unaffordable, it's not a priority, it's not in this annual plan, it's in the next couple of years, but now would be the time to be thinking about shifting that budget, that 7 million, because that budget's getting bigger every year. And so shift that now, and you're thinking, do something that maybe can complete center consultation. And that road should not be completed until we've figured out the form of our city anyway, because we could mess it up. Not that that happens in Upper Hutt, but just to defer that money in your mind, in your budget. Also, I do encourage inner city accommodation. It's come up a lot in social media about having inner city apartments. You've seen that slide before. Backpackers hostel, motorhome based, tiny home based, Maidstone Terrace. I do really encourage that to give vibrancy and life into our city. I know you guys can do this. I do encourage a rural park. There are dozens and dozens of parks in the inner city and dozens of public toilets. And it's not where I live, where Liz Hutson lives, same thing. The Whitemans Valley, Maymoor and Monroe area, there's no public park. And I know that a lot of our activities out there, the hill climb, we close our roads for the hill climb. There's no place for these poor people to go to the toilet. Cyclists, horse riders, we have homeschoolers, a really growing cluster of homeschoolers around the Monroe farm, and they would love to have a park. Tourists, shelters, toilet. And then it would hopefully, if you had your toilets there, run your water off the roof, as we do in the rural area. It would eliminate some of those cyclists taking a pee on people's gates and on their private property. This is not a new thing. They've seen all this before, but it just doesn't seem to become a priority to attend to the needs of the rural area. We are neglected. You know what that affects? That affects the well-being of the people who live in the rural area. So do a biodiversity strategy, and that would be what we would rename the sustainability strategy, because we've gone beyond the point of sustaining. We really have to do much more. So we have to build biodiversity protection and restoration. So rename it, and please do get working on that. Now the rural rating, I'm sure you would have heard a lot about this all day long. You have this really neat little pamphlet down in the foyer. Have you seen this one? Preparing your lifestyle block. There's nothing that can prepare you for living rurally. You have no idea. And there's no justification for discriminating against the rural lifestyle people. I live in a rural lifestyle block. It's 3.5 acres. Every square inch of that is used. We grow timber for the fire, to dry the clothes, to make the food, to heat the house, ash for the compost. It's permaculture. We grow all of our fresh food. We have eggs. That every square inch, like Liz mentioned, is used. We are farmers. We've been farmers for a very long time. So the proposed change to the 100 for rural lifestyle, that wasn't indicated in the consultation material for revenue and financing. That consultation wasn't in the shiny booklet. So it just feels like a sneaky effort to grab some more rates, but providing less services. lack of transportation and fairness, that is a good quality of this council as well. So rural is risky. It's very risky. In February, when my water tank was the lowest point ever at the end of summer, I looked out the car park of my house to the ridge line behind my next neighbor about a city block away. And this is what I saw. Okay, low water tanks, no reticulated water. If our neighbors hadn't put in an illegal pond for the Labradors, we would have been absolutely toasted. It took in the end, that pond kept that fire at that level until 2 choppers with monsoon buckets could come and put it out. So this is what we live with. It's risky. I know we all choose to live there. We love it. And it's risky, it's costly, it's remote. Okay, so it is really hard work. So we're providing all of our own infrastructure and maintaining it. So every 5 years, we have the septic tank emptied, $600-700 now. Every year, the water purification system upgraded another 300. So no public transportation, limited Wi-Fi. We're on our own. We're really on our own, and we're independent and we're self-sufficient, and that's the way we want to live. I would love to have some CCTVs to get those fly tips. It's increased the fly tipping. It's increased the hoons doing wheelies. I want to see what they're doing. You've got CCT here in the town. We want it up there. Okay. So we do take pressure off the urban sources, and power cuts. Yesterday, for example, a 6-hour power cut. What do? We're okay because we're set up for it. Most people, and this week you get power cuts in the city, right? Well, does your toilet stop flushing? Does your water stop running? No, but that's what happens to us. So it's rough out there, and we know it's rough, and we love it like that, but we don't expect council to make it rougher. To make it rougher by telling us that we need to pay more rates. That's just not it. But we used to have horseback riding around the valley. No, we don't anymore. Cyclists with kids, no, it's too dangerous. So our well-being has gone down, our services have not gone up, and you want to put the rates up. And a recent burden now is at the end of KMD where I live. Stu Adams is, whether he's bankrupt or what, but he's got mortgagee sale on 5 properties and his home, and the road that he took all those beautiful taonga trees down along remains unfinished, and we're going to have to finish it. That's an added expense for urban and rural. So you got to choose who you do your business with, because this is going to affect us. We've got dust piling up all the place, sliding road down the end, and people are driving faster because it's a straight road. So there are a lot of risks, and it's remote, and it's hard work, and it's costly, but we don't expect you to make it more costly. So when you neglect the needs of the rural community, it affects our well-being. So please hold the rates at 75. Put the rates for forestry up a bit more. Or give us all the services that you have in town. You know it's not fair. So that's what I have to say about that.
So you want to take questions on that now, because you're going to talk about the water too, is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
Want to take questions on any questions? No? Okay.
Okay, this is just on that last one. The library bus with this growing cluster of homeschoolers. I guess I hear that we have a $1 million EV library bus. It never has come out to our area. I'd love it to come out for the homeschoolers. That's just one more of the, emergency services got away a long time. So I can't quite see the bottom one, but curbside recycling, of course, we use the depot and it works beautifully. So if you take that away, you're going to harm the well-being of the rural people even more. So please think this through of what is fair. Okay. And the delight that the rural areas bring to the city. That's our hillside. That's our backdrop. That's where we have tourists go through. It's really nice to have a rural park. Have picnics. So that's what I have to say about that one. So any questions on the overall annual plan or the revenue and financing?
Thank you. There was no questions. Take onto your water.
No questions?
Yep.
Okay. Put it all before. So local water done well. I have some additional comments on that. But do we have a water strategy? Or is that what local water done well is going to be? I've been doing some research, and I'm sure you all have diligently as counselors been researching this topic as well in your free time. Auckland's not doing a bad job with their water care. One of the first things they did was set up a community forum with 40 people. This was in an article in News Hub, 29th of April. 40 people from all over the city to brainstorm what was needed. And they weren't experts by any means. That was a very good way to start, and I would suggest we start that way too. But I've talked about water before. The reticulated expensive water, that's only for drinking, cooking, and personal hygiene. That's like where we live in the rural area. You can learn a lot from the rural area around water, how to conserve it. And free tank storage for untreated rainwater for toilet flushing, clothes washing, gardening, and car washing. And H2O Extreme should be harvesting their rainwater for renewing their service. There's no reason why you use the expensive water for doing stuff that's not necessary. So I would say, look at the Auckland model. You got any more now? Look at the Auckland model and see what would suit us. And the responsibility we have at the headwaters of Te Awakareni to make sure that that river is put back into a healthy state. And that can happen really only by taking less water. So that's what I have to say about Wellington, local water done well, but you have to stand up and be strong with the councils that you choose to work with, okay? And you have that huge responsibility at the headwaters here, and you know the river is sick before it even hardly leaves our boundaries up at Te Marua. So that's, the water issue is really dear to my heart, and will probably require some sort of bylaw or a change in the building codes. I have a friend who built a house up in Auckland underwater here. And the regulations for his new build was his house now sits on a cistern that holds 20,000 liters of water. That was mandatory. That makes so much sense. We do that up in Alaska. We've been doing that in Alaska for dumpsters. So those sorts of things, just like with H2O, when they tore up the car park, why didn't you put water tanks? Car park. Why didn't you guys think about that? You know, have all that lovely rainwater you could use for swimming pool instead of the expensive reticulated water. So those decisions, those are future decisions. But for now, I agree that working with our neighboring councils is the way to go. And I know this is futuristic. This is going to come down through the 5-2 work, implementation, and all that stuff. You're going to have to bring it all together. But be strong with your neighboring councils and do everything you can to reduce the amount of money reduce the amount of water that's taken out of the river. And use that free water up there. Use that stuff that we've been gathering. Our tanks are full now. Use that water we've been gathering over the last couple of days. So I'd left you also, I would like to table these papers, and I've given them to Haley. I think you might have received them. So that's just extra information about water. To use in the future. So it's not like we're living in the rural, just to finish off. It's not Beatrix Potter. And it's not Bambi. It's pretty tough. But we're tough. We choose it to be tough, but we don't want our council to be any tougher on us. So please keep that at 75.
Any questions for Mary Beth?
Just one, your worship. Thank you, Mary Beth, for coming and presenting both on the annual plan and local water done well. I don't think that we as a council have much of an option of where we go with local water done well, and I totally concur with you that when we look at our neighbouring partners in this, we just need to make sure that our voice is quite strong. So thank you, and taken on board some of the recommendations on points that you didn't raise in the plan in your oral presentation. So thank you.
Any questions on my original?
Any further questions? Thank you. Thank you. We now move to submitter 247 on page 88, Tony Chad.
Thank you. Somebody going to help me to use the PowerPoint?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That'd be good. So presentations are not my strong point. I'm waiting. All right. Okay. Are we warmed up?
We've got something across the slide though.
There we go. Okay, thank you. I did a written submission and I can answer any questions on that, hopefully, if you have any. But I just came up this afternoon. I wanted to raise two issues, two little points that are kind of close to my heart. The first one, maybe directly in that nine years ago, I had open heart surgery. And I've had great support since then with the Heart Foundation. Now, I received a brochure from them just last year to let me know that their stance has changed. So if you can go to the next, I'd really like you to get hold of that document, look at their position statement, because they now say there is no safe level of alcohol consumption. I'll leave that with you because I know you work on a lot of issues to do with alcohol. So it used to be that they said a few beers for your heart or a couple of red wines for your heart in moderation, which we never adhere to, of course. But now they say there is no safe. Now, what I really want to talk about was the next slide, the local cat policy. So I was here a year ago as part of the long-term plan, and this is really a bit of an update on that. And again, I've got so much supporting documentation, which I've asked to be tabled along with these PowerPoint notes. There's no chance of getting through this in 5 minutes. The best thing would probably be if we could arrange a meeting with Pest Free Upper Hutt and the council, maybe as a focus group, maybe whatever, to see where we might go with a cat policy. I joined Pest Free just after they started up in 2018. Without the heart operation, I wouldn't have been there. So my big interest last year was the bats and the cats. Well, the bats and the kiwi, sorry. So we have a colony of bats discovered up at Pakuratahi, which is phenomenal. And then the other end of the valley, we've been doing the research with the sound recorders, and we know that the kiwi that started off in Wainui are moving. They want to come to Upper Hutt. And cats is a big problem for both the bats, because the bats feed on the ground, and for the kiwi, especially the baby kiwi, who are really vulnerable. They leave the nest within 3 or 4 weeks, and they have to fend for themselves against cats. And this all sits with the sustainability strategy, the goals, goal 2, goal 5, goal 7, principle A. It's all meant to happen. So this is all self-evident. I think if we can move on to the next. This is how you might look at a cat policy. You can look at the other people in the country who've done it already. These people on the right are all supportive. Even people like the companion Animals New Zealand, they're really in favour of cats, but they want to see them looked after better. And one way to do that is to separate the domestic cats from the feral cats. And we have to keep rolling because my time will disappear. This is what we had last year. So we've got, we have the kiwi and the short-tailed bats here. We can roll on. We've had lots of grants from council and sustainability for this. These were supplied to me just last month. These are from Wainui, just over the hill where we're looking for the kiwis to come in. If you can see where I've ringed that, this is taken on I think it was the same night in this one. You've got 2 kiwi in a trail cam, and then exactly the same spot, you've got a cat. Now, you might think from this that cats and kiwi can coexist quite happily. Well, they can't. So if you get into the figures, 90% of hold on. Go to me about presentations. Oh, here we go. Kiwi chicks are really vulnerable to predators. During the first 3 to 4 weeks, the baby kiwi mostly feeds at night and sometimes during the day, extremely vulnerable to predators. Around 90% of kiwi chicks born in the wild die within the first 6 months. 70% of them are killed by stoats and cats. Only 5% of the chicks survive to adulthood. So if we go to throw on to my last, well, this one, onto the next. I'll leave you with that. What sort of New Zealand do we want? Yeah, so it's the same situation. Taking a Wainui Mata, cats and kiwis is just a mix. That's as much as I can do in this time. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions for Dave? Councillor Ultra?
Thank you. I just wondered if you could elaborate on the councils that do have a cat policy. What have they achieved, and have they noticed any difference? And so, like the pest-free organisation, are they seeing a difference?
I don't have updates on that yet, but I do know that they find it very difficult. The first step is to set up a policy and indicate to the community how best to manage the cats for the wildlife's betterment, for the cats' health. Feral cats don't do any favors to domestic cats. So what I'm reading is we really need a national cat policy to set the tone for everything. But the ones people like Lower Hutt started it because of the effect on the dotterels that are over at Eastbourne. They get decimated all the time, chomped to bits by cats. And no matter what you tell the people, it's just a matter of education, and we just have to keep on and on about it. So to get a policy in place and then probably move more to enforcing it after that, but to tell them this is how things need to be, it would be a good starting point, which is why I'm suggesting Pest-Free would love to talk to council about where to go on this.
Thank you.
Councillor Holdness?
Thank you, Your Worship. Hi, Tony, thanks. I think Lower Hutt only has the microchipping and desexing as part of their policy at the moment. Is that right? You would suggest that we go further than that in terms of keeping in at night and number restriction?
I would love for all that to happen. Registering, desexing and microchipping are the 3 big recommendations. Microchipping is a huge thing to keep your domestic cats safe, apart from anything else. They turn up at shelters and people don't know where they come from. Sometimes they get back to their owner, sometimes they don't. Trapping, there's more and more trapping going on, which is a great thing. But a lot of the modern traps for catching possums and stoats and so on, they're moving to AI technology, so that if an animal with a microchip in it comes up towards the trap won't trigger. Okay, cat is safe. And often they don't actually work during the day either to keep your domestic animals safe. But without microchipping, the trap doesn't know any more than anybody who catches one in a live trap and wonders what to do with it. I think it's actually a legal requirement if you catch a feral cat to deal with it one way or another, which may just be taken to the vet or whatever. It's very different if you're out in a rural conservation area that where there's no question where the cat came from. But we have somewhere like, I think, 2 million feral cats throughout New Zealand.
Would you be happy just to make a start in terms of the
Absolutely.
shipping and
We have to start somewhere. This is all supportive of the Predator Free 2050 project. And the truth is that we're not going to make that without having a cap policy and without dealing to pigs, goats, deer.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Tony, I'd like to talk to you about the alcohol-free bylaw. You're supporting option 2, which is introducing, you know, a local alcohol fees bylaw. So by doing that, you're hoping that the fees are such that people will stop selling alcohol. Is that your wish? Is that what you're hoping for by supporting option 2?
I would like to see a healthier community. I've loved alcohol through all my adult years. You don't play in an Irish band in Irish pubs and get free Guinness without enjoying it. And I don't think it has actually done me much harm. But as your body gets older, sometimes things catch up with you that you didn't even know about. But when it comes to the health of your heart, I go to these people, the Heart Foundation people who are in touch every month looking for support. They do a huge job. And I'd love you to read that document. It makes good reading. We have denied this all our lives, you know. When you go into the pubs in England and you have to buy a round because that's the way it is, you say, "What's your poison?" I thought that's a funny thing to say. I looked it up in the health things on Google, and I said, "Alcohol is a poison." Oh, wow. So our culture has to grow up a bit.
Okay, any other questions? No, thanks, Tony. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We now move to submitter 257, and that's Daniel Mitchell. Not here. So we do have our next 258 on page 123, Angela McLeod. Welcome, Angela.
Kia ora, e honga. Not going to keep you very long. On the local water done well, if because I have a little bit of time for both, but I won't keep you too long. On the local water done well, I just wanted to say, as I said in my submission, I'm actually really disappointed that the community didn't see what it might cost. I understand that there is a cost to go back to how we were before Wellington Water. Our troubles started when we went with Wellington Water. They didn't keep up with their solar bargain, and I just wanted to say that I'm disappointed that I didn't see the information out here for the local water done well to actually be incredibly local. You know, localism is just, I mean, the only way anybody is going to be able to find out the information is to probably do a series of Lagoima requests for different information of costs and how much. I just think it's a real shame that the community didn't get a chance to think of that when they were asked to think of the local water done well. I just wanted to pick up on some information around rural, you know, having lived there for pretty much most of my life, and some of the conversations that have been going on around the differential and the changing of that, and what it actually means to live rurally. So it fits in with the forestry thing as well. And I think that it actually need to be really clever about how that might work. I don't know that the 290 factor is a good one, and I know that you've gone out and said, you know, let's do 75. 0.75. Well, that's great. But what about the commercial contractors that people are having issues with, the community having issues with them, and they're destroying the roads? Those roads were never designed for 55-tonne trucks. They're class 2 and class 3 roads in the old system. They're just not built for it. And, you know, I drive through that valley just about every day, and the potholes and the edges of the roads are disintegrating at a rate of knots because of that weight. And I just wonder whether if you're going to stay at that 0.75, that when you get to, because it's a permitted activity, there has to be a harvest notice, that maybe there's a space there where you could charge like a development contribution. Is there a contribution you might be able to put in place to charge for the roads, the maintenance on the roads, because it is phenomenal, a phenomenal cost. And so that's just, maybe have a look at that. There has to be a way to be able to do it, because there are a lot of people that have forestry on their rural blocks that aren't commercial, and so bringing it down from 290 to 75 looks after those people. I get that, but it would just be kind of nice to capture how we might look after our roads. So that's in that sense. And also with the differential, unfortunately what happened when we took the differential off, and I'll say we, because I was around the council table when that happened, when we take the differential away from rural and changed it to 30 hectares, it put most rural properties in high value residential. And so now, because there's no definition of rural versus residential, rural people that have properties that fit the value of high value residential are being slammed with that. So, that's, I guess, where some of the concern has come from in the community, and have a think about how, that might, because, I'm not the sort of person that wants street lights and footpaths, but there's a lot more people living out there, so there needs to be some consideration given, to how those rates might, and also digital connectivity. Remember the research that was done around how many people in rural Upper Hutt do not have access to this internet connectivity. I don't see anywhere where that's been thought about, and it'd be really good to see if we're going to keep with those high rates. Then there needs to be some benefit, and some consideration of digital connectivity would be good to see. The other, I just wanted to pick up on a previous submit. I was talking about the health issues around alcohol. The Cancer Society is also doing a lot of work around the carcinogenic effect of alcohol, and there's more, work being done in a campaign space around that. So do give a lot of consideration to the health and well-being of our community around what we do with alcohol. I'm not I'm not the sort of person that thinks that we should be slamming more fees on people. There has to be other ways we can do it, like reduce the number of alcohol outlets. There's a whole brand new one being built opposite St Pat's, right outside of school. And we're talking about the drinking culture and the access to alcohol that people have right across the road from impressionable young lads. I mean, honestly, we need to be a little bit clever as a community as to where we have the alcohol outlets. So I'd really implore you to do that through the DLC network and space that you have there. The other one that I just wanted to pick up on, the other thing that I would just like to say is through the LTP, a lot of the community presented some really cool ideas on how you might be able to better use your rates, and I didn't see any change. I really wouldn't like to see that here. This is the annual plan, and yes, it's a little wee part of that whole long-term plan process, but you'll be hearing a lot of ideas from people, and the community are taking their time to put these things together, in their own time. A lot of them, unless they're paid to do it, they're not getting paid to do it. It's their voluntary time. They've put a lot of thought into it, and I really would like to see some recognition of that from you as to the submitters.
Thank you, Angela. Any questions? Councillor Newell.
Thank you very much, Angela, for coming along. And I am just that I don't get the logic behind the issue of the connectivity. I understand that connectivity is a problem in the rural area, yes, but we as a council don't pay for people in the urban area to have connectivity. So I don't get the logic there.
Sure. An example might be there's no fibre in rural Upper Hutt. So unfortunately, that's a problem nationwide. You know, rural fibre is expensive, but also it's a matter of consents and things to be able to put fibre in. So one way, I do realise that council don't, can't pay for that, but they could allow for infrastructure, include digital infrastructure in the infrastructure discussions, and allow for a quicker, easier or streamlined consent process in order to be able to put fibre in. That's one of the things that Chorus have told me on numerous occasions. They want councils to be supportive of them asking to be able to do the work. So that's one way council could facilitate.
Any other questions, councillor?
Thank you, Your Worship. Angela, thanks for coming. Is the technology kind of already moving faster than councils and these providers are anyway in terms of Starlink?
Yeah.
Like, because if it's not economical for Chorus to roll it out, the technology is just going to keep coming to find a way to make it economical that way.
Yep, sure. So with that, and as personally at our house, we have Starlink. It's the only way we can get connectivity. There is a cell phone tower within sight, but it's well used, and so we don't get. It's not a decent coverage, to be able to use that technology. So yes, we bought Starlink. We are lucky. We're in a position where we're able to afford. We can afford Starlink. However, the government put aside some funding for remote and isolated communities where there was a grant system, so that if you didn't have connectivity for some reason or another, you could apply to use that grant to then be able to put in what you needed in your remote or isolated living space. And it would be nice. I mean, I do understand the financial constraints at the moment, but it would be nice to give some thought to how the council might be able to do that for its residents, because that's the problem. The problem is not having access to good high-speed stuff, and some people might not be able to afford it. Granted, there'll be people that don't want it, are quite happy to go home and, and in order for us to use our cell phones at home, we have to use the Wi-Fi calling. So you have to have cell phones that can do that, have the capacity to do that, because not all of them do. So,
any other questions?
Just ways to.
No.
Angela, thanks for coming along. I actually want to go back to local water done well, if that's okay,
sure.
rather than the annual thing. So you'd be aware when you were on council and you talked about us going to Wellington Water Model, but you would be aware that the cost, that if we did go it on our own, we don't have wastewater and we don't have the lakes for reticulated water, that we would be a user of those, and then in a situation where we would be targeted or a rate would be put on our people. Do you think that that would be still more affordable than what it would be with the workings that have been put out with regard to the consultation if we go with the 5 other councils, which was one of the options?
Well, there's 2 things. Firstly, how did we do it before Wellington Water? Because we managed to get the water from the lakes, we managed to have wastewater, and we managed to have storm water before there was such a thing as an entity called Wellington Water. So how did we do it then? And your second point was around the cost. Well, I don't know. So I can't answer that for you because I haven't seen it. So when you're saying about, you were saying about the costs of it, I don't know. So, and no one in the community knows, because we weren't given that information, we weren't given that opportunity to consider that as an option. And I know you probably did, and I know you most likely did in workshops and things, and I get how it works. I completely get how it works, but it would have been really nice to see the information out in the community.
Okay, no other questions?
Yep.
Thank you. Thanks, Angela. We now move to submitter 281 on page 127, Louise Cleghorn. Louise.
Well, it isn't going to take long because I completely agree with what Angela said about Wellington Water done well. And the problem has been that there's no clear model of what is going to happen. And what I read about Wellington, when I read the Wellington Regional Council papers, all 27 sheets of them or whatever it was, and it didn't give me a clear idea apart from how inefficient it's going to be. They're going to put a body like Genesis only for water, and then they're going to put a supervisory somehow control over it, over the top of it from what I read. And that sort of seems to be a duplication of resources. So as far as the Wellington Water goes, then I think that that is just so much money wasted. It will be slow and cumbersome and nobody knows what's going to happen. It hasn't happened yet. How long is it going to take to set up and so on and so forth. So, I mean, I'm totally against that and I would love to go back to how we were before Wellington Water even. Certainly to do it on our own or investigate how much it would cost might be a better way forward for us as Upper Hutt. If not, then we have to combine with the other councils and do everything together, you know, and have really close working relationships with the other councils. It's my view. I certainly don't want to see water meters, but any option you offer has water meters in them. And the reason isn't because I think that it would be more expensive initially, because it probably wouldn't, probably be less cost, but you have the opportunity to ramp up the cost, ramp up the cost, ramp up the cost. And also it's not fair. One limit of water, 1 unit of water usage for the elderly population, that they would not use any of or come approaching to use the allocation of a unit for a family of 5. If you have a family of 5, we have a family of 7 in our house. You have a family of 7. I mean, the number of nappies we have to wash. I mean, actually, we don't hand wash them or anything else like that, but we have to wash the bums. You know what I mean? You know, children require a lot of water to wash them, and like we would use our allocation up dead quick. But somebody living on their own, well, no, they wouldn't. So it's like it's got inequities everywhere in it, in that system. I don't think that the system we have today is completely fair, but it's not, you know, we're used to it. And you know, if that's all right with you guys, I just want to mention something about crossings. I know that in Upper Hutt, there has been discussion on these, but the amount of crossings, especially with that lady getting killed down in Silverstream on that crossing, and there's a lot of crossings in Upper Hutt that need shifting because like even King Street, where I live on King Street, we come to the bottom of King Street and you've got a crossing there, and then you've got the waiting. Now, only one car can park the other side. So you have to sort of, that's fine if there isn't heavy traffic. You get the one car the other side and you leave the crossing clear, and then they wait for the traffic and they go. And then the next car can go over and so forth. But there is lots of times when there's like, oh, I'm looking and there's so many traffic, I've got to go forward, I've got to go on the crossing. You know, so I mean, sometimes you find yourself there without even realising that, you know, because you've been watching the traffic rather than watching the crossing. And the one at Ward Street is extremely dangerous. When you are going round the roundabout, you're thinking about going round the roundabout and you come across a car stopped and the exit to the roundabout, you haven't seen it, you know, so you're stopped behind on the roundabout because there's Chris crossing and he takes ages to cross over because I mean he's got really old. Anyway, he comes to our church, he's really lovely, but he does take a long while crossing the street. And, you know, you have to all wait and then the traffic all builds up and then all mounts back. And I think that you need to review all of the crossings in Upper Hutt, see what it is that they need to be in order to make the traffic safe. That's all I want to say today.
Okay, Louise, any questions for Councillor Carey?
Yeah, thank you. I agree on the crossings and looking at a lot of them, we're getting a lot of feedback, but I'm just keen to understand where people are getting information on metering and that, because there's a lot of narrative going around about inequity with this or it being a justification for commercialisation. And I could throw the same consideration back to you with the one you're using in a different sense, that if you're being careful with your water usage, regardless of your family size, and your neighbour, say, is washing their boat and their car and hosing down their driveway, you know, every other weekend and they're using even more, without metering, you're paying the same amount. regardless of your usage, right? Because you can't charge anything for a volume without measuring it. So I just want to know where people are coming up with this sort of understanding.
We lived at Plateau at one time, and right at the end of Plateau, and we had a water meter. And we didn't use above our capacity every week. You know, every quarter we got charged quarterly, I think, or it could have been monthly, whatever, it's a long time ago. It was 2000 to 2005, 2006, something like that. So, you know, at that stage, we were having a unit of water at the farm, whatever the unit was, I can't remember. So that was fine, and we had a family at that stage of 6 and 7, and we weren't using more. So, I mean, I didn't wash any boats or anything else up there, and we used, I mean, we're not, I'm not wasteful of water, but then there was a time when we had a leak on the property and we did use more than our water meter. So, I mean, we actually wrote to the council, and they wiped the extra cost because we said it was a leak, and we had it fixed as soon as we noticed it. It was a rainy period, so we thought this puddle was actually now then where I'm getting my information from is Capity, where they went with water metering, and as a consequence their whole usage went down, and then the water authority, whatever, realised they weren't making ends meet, so they hiked all the rates up.
Okay, any other questions? No? Thank you, Louise. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We now go to submitter 249, which is page 131. Heather Blissett. Heather.
Right. Kia ora. I was just saying about the crossings, actually, even if we raise them, what that's what these raised. And I'd like to table my submission of that. Right, so I'll just start with local water done well. My concern is if there's red flags when you're dating, they don't disappear when you're married. An urban person, if an urban person is not connected to any service, why should they be charged for the service? Why not be treated the same as rural? I'd like to see protections in place regarding water take and the environmental impacts of our waters. Not just from a supply and demand, but mindful that water is a living energy. I'd like to include a better method of handover, should that be the final decision, to protect our assets should things go wrong. Imagine if the water board then sold off our assets to pay off their debts. I'd like a lower cap on the water take overall. The river is already at 1/3 of her natural flow, and an assurance that everyone would have the right to a reasonable minimum amount of water. Also, halt all new infrastructure, fix and redesign before proceeding, harvest water and consider tiny home communities. The other concern is, you know, you could end up with the beginnings of theft of water from public taps. Just the thought as well. So with the annual plan, on page 5 and 6, you talk about the impact of rising costs and what will it cost. And I know this might seem a little bit insulting, and I hope not, but Great Power mentioned it, but actually I just wanted to bring the reality. This is the cost that's costing the ratepayers. So when we make these decisions, it seems pretty trivial and harmless and all that, but actually we're taking food from their mouths. It's actually getting harder for people out there, whether they're single or families or whatever their circumstances. I do try and write this and go for a walk and come back and tone it down and be nice, but sometimes you can't help just that little bit of creeps in, and that was, you know, we're hearing about expenses that are behind closed doors, and sometimes it feels like you've got a family member with a gambling addiction who's in charge of your household finances, and it shouldn't feel that way. And I know that there's been, you know, there's a bit on both sides of the fence. You know, there's a bit of dissatisfaction with community, but I actually think council are also feeling a little bit as well. And maybe it's time we start working together to repair that, because it has that divide to become a bit fast.
So regarding the annual plan and the food's an essential life. You know, we talk about getting back to core basics. Food is a core basic, water is a core basic. Why aren't we growing food on all the berms and reserves? I realise it's got to be play areas, so I'm not saying absolutely every space. We can actually have a circular network economy. There's already a lot that's already happening out there. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's community gardens. You know, we could start producing food, eggs, honey, for example, just using what we've already got out there. And the other concern I've got, and I've said this before, if we join the other councils to form a water board, the water board is about 60% of what you do. That's 4 governing boards and 4 lots of operate, isn't it? Okay, you're shaking your head. We'll do that in the questions. Okay. It just feels like, because we've got the Hutt Valley Shared Services, we've got Greater Wellington, we've got a water board, and we've got a local government. Plus, for example, some things come up across the Yakatara Cemetery was on 3 agendas. Do we need that many meetings? Curbside recycling. 1 local company will reduce the number of trucks on the road. The downside is other companies can't stay viable during the term of their contract. That means that 1 company will eventually have the monopoly and the prices may go up. Not all people have enough rubbish to warrant prepaid service. I suggest including a composting service. It's been pointing out there is an existing service. It's cheaper than the option on the table. I still think there should be incentives for the people who use less water, less waste, etc. The concurrent consultation. Again, I'm going to say that we are in the top 3 highest in the country for domestic abuse, and gambling and alcohol are definitely contributing factors. And regarding, lastly, community engagement, I saw it on the policy.com with people's pre-election statements, and people in the community have said it, and I'll say it again, we talk about, and it was in the audit as well, we talk about more engagement with community. We've already started doing that, and so I welcome you. I keep inviting people, and you're more than welcome to join us at our hui. I'll put the dates on the submission. That's it.
Okay, any questions for Heather? Councillor Newell.
Yes, thanks, Heather. As always, great to hear from you. Just a clarification. Where did you get this idea that councillors are paid a base salary and extra for other meetings that they sit on?
So it was my understanding that when you become a councillor, and I could be completely wrong, that you get your base salary for your basic job, but if you sit on other boards, you get so you get extras for sitting on certain. But it actually shows in the
chair.
But that's chair of policy.
Oh, okay.
But not per.
So I would have just thought that anyone sitting on any other meeting got supplementary. No.
You get way more people at way more meetings.
Yeah.
Actually, it used to be like that.
Yeah,
it did. Yeah.
Sorry, and you were shaking your head before too. So.
Oh, no.
No, that's all right.
Any other questions? Councillor Meany.
Thank you. Just about the second bullet point you did under local water done well. If an urban person is not connected to any of the services, why should they be charged? I'm not sure that they will. Where did you?
I got told they will. No.
Based on connection.
Oh, okay, because I thought it wasn't, and then someone corrected me and said no, it was. So I thought I'd better just keep it.
If there's language that suggests that, maybe raise that with us, we get it changed. But definitely not.
Okay. No, that's good news. Thank you. Shake your head away next time. One more.
Okay, we now go to submission 245, which is page 139. You're not speaking? Okay, so we go to submission 244, which is Paul Fabian. Okay, thank you.
So I'd like to table some documents. I believe I'm lucky last. Lucky me. So, good evening. I'd like to share with you a few views on my annual plan, Local Water Done Well. Recycling. On face value, I've said I prefer to continue the current recycling station operation and work with the private sector to improve curbside recycling services. Our community should be able to choose to have curbside recycling and not have it mandated. However, I will say, unless there's been further analysis done and a little bit more understanding of how this impacts our community, it's hard to choose either. I haven't seen any other anything else that has come out around the conditions, size of bins, frequency, all of those things come out through the consultation information, and those obviously have an impact, as do, as stated in the consultation document, that it's going to be, and Mayor Guppy has also stated in the annual meeting, between $3 to $5 per week. There are current curbside recycling offerings between $1.97 and $2.56 per week from the private sector. This would also help reduce the risk of a monopoly in this particular sector in the Hutt Valley, and then the raising of the prices due to that monopoly. It's also been, has it also been taken into consideration that Upper Hutt has a lot of development going on? And as part of that development, there are more and more dwellings with little or no space to accommodate multiple wheelie bins for waste recycling and on both sections and or people's houses. Even the roads now, off-street parking is becoming less and less available. I do understand the council's dilemma over where to put another recycling centre if that option is chosen. And that Mayor Guppy has confirmed that to upgrade with another centre would cost approximately $500,000 for 50 cents a week, as opposed to the $3 to $5 per week for an ongoing curbside recycling. I think it still has to be investigated about how we can actually get another recycling centre. Revenue and financing policy. Fees and charges seem to be already predetermined, but it would be nice if council could be more prudent on how they spend and gain revenue to benefit the community as a whole. Longer lasting plants, low maintenance flower beds, more emphasis on core activities and less on some of the nice to haves, and I might get shot down for this, maybe some sports grounds, lighting or AstroTurf. Rates. I want to note that Upper Hutt City Council added a rate finder this annual plan, and I think that was really, really good. I think there's opportunity for improvement, and after some feedback from the community, the Greater Wellington Regional Council rates link was added. However, it was sort of hidden. I couldn't really find it. It's not there front and centre, so people can go one shop, one stop, done. I think that feeds back into some of the suggestions like Councillor Bentley have had around, including the public or community groups in some of these reviews, because those things could be brought up because that's what they want. That's what they need to see, and they'll tell you. Forestry and rural rating changes. For the forestry rating values, the council need to make sure that it's appropriate for damage that may be caused to rural roads when logging time comes. Could there be a middle ground? And I put it down here, maybe a number of 100. Now, who knows? I don't have any numbers in behind that to say whether that's right or wrong, or some sort of balanced number. Urban has to cover this long term. We also have to take into consideration the change which seems to deem rural properties under 30 hectares as needing to pay urban rates. If these properties are not connected to certain services, and those services are included in general rating, then how can these increases be justified? Rural residents have large expenses to manage their own water and waste, and thus shouldn't be charged for these. My concern is that nothing is clearly set out. There needs to be a clear statement of what is and isn't classed as rural. Is it distance? Is it size? Is it both? I've seen both our properties on the Upper Hutt City Council's map site of over 30 hectares, which are classed as under 30 hectares, and vice versa. Alcohol fees bylaw. I support option 2 to introduce an alcohol fees bylaw. However, I think there needs to be some sort of good behaviour or something like the insurance companies have, where you have a no claims bonus for compliance. Obviously, more analysis will need to be made to make a final decision, as there are factors which are not covered in those papers. Do all establishments behave well now, who are expected to get higher raises? Gambling revenues policy. On the face of it, I support option 1, status quo. If we drop too many machines, then we push this online or underground. And also community groups suffer from the lack of grants from gambling. But ultimately, I don't know if I can fully support either option, as it's unknown what the true impact of each option is. Has there been impact analysis done and costings on removing the machines? What is the impacts to those who gamble, and if there is support services required? Or will there be a lift in crime, which is already at a high rate? This seemed my annual plan one. Am I able to continue?
No, at this time. Any questions? Any questions? No question on that part? No.
So I'm able to continue with local water? Thank you. So, local water. Well, no real options here. As Councillor Carson has said at 4:31 this afternoon, the train has already left the station. It seems a little bit undermining, and I know how hard it is for you guys. You guys are stuck in the middle. It's shocking, absolutely shocking. How can the community be expected to choose what happens with water and waste and stormwater based on the minimal information that's provided? Reports and figures have been provided seem to be out of date, yet a current councillor has indicated there are updated numbers and modelling. These have not been able to be provided to the community, nor be included with consultation information. We have even raised the question with the finance director around this modelling and the data behind it. As Joe O'Malley has mentioned earlier, he has as well. We have yet to have a response. It is hard to decide when the Scott report supplied as additional information by the council is what things seem to be based on, yet supposedly newer modelling data is available. When Mayor Guppy has not really referred to this in the annual plan meetings that we attended, and is unable to discuss or provide indicative costs of $7 a day, which are highlighted in the report. That's on page 76 of the Scott report, just in case. Councillor Carson even stated on the 11th of December that the option provided to the community were effectively one and the same. We had been saying that for a couple of months before that, and we agree. Then very unconvincingly, on the 12th of February, you guys around this table all pushed forward with the consultations options for our local water done well. It did not seem like a vote that we are all comfortable with the direction, and the awkward silence at the end of the meeting was very telling. And I have a link here to the original video. My last page, which I'm not going to read out, is not on local water, but it's a whole lot of comments from the community around the recycling that's happening down us. You're welcome to read it yourself.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Thanks.
Now, that brings us to the end of the submissions for the evening at 6:13. We will adjourn the meeting till 10 AM tomorrow, Tuesday the 20th. Close the meeting. Thank you.